you gotta do is read a book. Open up the cover and take a look.
Hello, my name is Ann Freeman. I live in Monrovia, and I was the school librarian at Wild Rose for 23 years. I worked at Arcadia Library and Botanical Library at the Huntington Library. I've chosen a book called Super Grandpa. I chose this book because it's based on a true story that happened maybe about 70 years ago. It takes place in Sweden, and the author is David Schwartz. Anyway, a little bit about things for you to look for, because I love picture books, and I love artists, and I love to get information from pictures. This is the Swedish flag. Very, very simple flag. Very similar to the flags in Norway and Denmark because it's part of the Scandinavian countries in Northern Europe. Also in this book, you will see bicycle. You'll see Super Grandpa's bicycle as well as many other bicycles. This is an old-fashioned two-wheel bicycle. We'll talk about lingonberries. Lingonberries are very similar to cranberries, but they grow in the Scandinavian countries. And at least once a week I have yogurt with lingonberry jam on. I bought this in a Swedish store called IKEA. In Sweden, they used to do a lot of folk crafts made of wood. This is a Dalla horse. If you see a Dalla horse, you'll know that it is probably from Sweden. I have a collection. This is one of my large ones. I have two that are larger. This is a small one, and I have about 5 that are even smaller, and some that are in between. You will see a park bench. And beside that park bench, there'll be 2 kittens guarding over Super Grandpa while he sleeps. And at the very end, you will see a trophy. This trophy had to change hands at least one time. And the number 0. I'm going to share with you the book Super Grandpa, written by David M. Schwartz and illustrated by Bert Dodson. Gustav was over 66 years old. His hair was snow white, his beard a great white bush. His face rippled with wrinkles whenever he smiled. Gustav looked like an old man, but he didn't feel old, and he certainly didn't act old. Everyone that saw Gustav every day on his bicycle, rain or shine, riding through the crooked streets of Grant Volta, past the bakers, the butchers, the wooden toy makers. Each morning he pedaled over the stone bridge, reaching out of town, up steep hills, scattered with farms, down narrow lanes, bordered by stores, then home again to his morning paper and a bowl of yogurt and lingonberries. One morning, Gustav read something very exciting in the paper. There was going to be a bicycle race called the Tour of Sweden. It would be more than 1,700 kilometers, over 1,000 miles, and it would last many days. This Tour of Sweden is for me, exclaimed Gustav. But you're too old to ride that bicycle in that race, said his wife. keel over," said his son. "It'd be the end of you." Even his grandchildren laughed at the thought of him riding that bicycle. "You can't ride your bike 1,700 kilometers, Grandpa." "Ah, strumphat," answered Gustav. "Silly talk." And he hopped onto his bike and rode away to see the judges of the race. He would tell them that he planned to enter the Tour of Sweden. "But this race is for young people," the first judge explained. "You're too old, Gustav," said the second judge. "You'd never make it to the finish." "We can only admit racers who are strong and fit," insisted the third judge. "Well, what if you collapse in the middle of the race?" "Oh, strumphat," said Gustav. "I have no intention of collapsing in that race, and I am strong and fit." But the judges were not convinced. "We're sorry, Gustav," one of them answered him. Go home to your rocking chair." Gustav went home, but he did not go to his rocking chair. "They can keep me out of the race," he muttered, "but they cannot keep me off the road." The next morning, Gustav began to prepare for the long race ahead. He arose with the sun, packed some fruit and rye bread, and cycled far out of town, over rolling hills dotted with ancient castles, across valleys dimpled with lakes, through the forest thick with birches and pines. It was mid-afternoon before he returned. The next day he biked even further. Each day he added more miles to his ride. A few days before the race, all the young cyclists boarded a special train to Haparanda, a tiny village in the far north of Sweden, where the race was to begin. But Gustav was not an official racer. He had no train ticket. There was only one way for Gustav to ride in the Tour of Sweden. He would have to pedal over 1,000 kilometers, about 600 miles, to the starting line. It took him several days to bike there. He arrived just as the Tour of Sweden was about to begin. All the racers were numbered, but of course there was no number for Gustav. So he found a scrap of bright red fabric and made his own. What number should he be? He had an idea. He wasn't supposed to be in the race at all, so he would be number 0. He chuckled as he cut out a big red 0 and pinned it on his shirt. Then he wheeled his bicycle to the starting line. The starting gun popped, and the young cyclists took off in a spurt. Their legs pumped furiously, and their bikes sprinted ahead. They soon left Gustav far behind. That night, the racers stopped at an inn. They were treated to dinner and a bed. Hours later, Gustav reached the inn, but there was no bed for him, so he just kept pedaling. While the others snoozed the night away, Gustav pedaled down into the night. Early the next day, the other cyclists passed Gustav. He kept up with his steady pace, and late that evening he again overtook the young racers as they rested. In the middle of the night, he napped for 3 hours on a park bench. On the third morning, Gustav was the first to arrive. In the little town of Luleå, a small crowd of people waited, hoping to catch a glimpse of the racers zooming by. Instead, they saw Gustav. His white beard fluttered in the breeze. his red cheeks puffed with breath. "Look!" cried a little girl. "Look! Here comes Super Grandpa!" "Super Grandpa!" Everyone craved and crawled over to see. Yes, he does look like a Super Grandpa. A few clapped, others shouted friendly greetings. Some of the children held out their hands, and Gustav brushed their palms as he raced by. "Good luck to you, Super Grandpa!" A photographer snapped Gustav's picture. It appeared the next day in the newspaper. The headline read, "Super Grandpa Takes a Ride." Now all of Sweden knew about Super Grandpa Hackinson. When he got hungry or thirsty, people gave him yogurt with lingonberries, tea and cake, fruit juice, rye bread, or any other snack he wanted. Newspaper reporters rushed up to talk to him. They radioed new interviews. They broadcast every word he spoke. Everyone wanted to know how he felt. "I have never felt better in my whole life," he said. "But aren't you tired?" they asked. "How can I be tired when I'm surrounded by this much kindness?" And with a push on the pedal and a wave of his hand, Gustav was rolling down the road. Once again, Gustav rode through the night, passing the other racers as they slept. When his muscles felt stiff, he remembered his cheering fans, and he pedaled even harder. And so it was, day after night, night after day, by the light of the moon, Gustav quietly passed the young racers in their beds. Then he slept outside, but only for a few hours. Under the long rays of the morning sun, they overtook him and left him behind, struggling to keep up. His spirits and his pace were slowed, but each day it took them a little bit longer to catch up with Gustav. On the 6th morning of the race, thousands of people lined the road. As Gustav rode by, their joyful cheers traveled with him like a wave through the crowd. He rode faster. "You're almost there, Super Grandpa. Just a few more kilometers. Don't look back. You're going to win." Win? Gustav hadn't thought about winning. He had simply wanted to ride in the Tour of Sweden and reach the finish line. But win? "You're out in front, Super Grandpa. A few more kilometers, and you'll be the winner." What? The winner? Gustav glanced over his shoulders. The pack of racers streaked across the last bridge. They hunched their shoulders low over their handlebars. They raised their backs high above their seats. Gustav decided not to think about them. Instead, he thought about his many fans. He thought about how they wanted him to win. And suddenly, he wanted to win too. He looked ahead. In the distance, he could see a bright blue banner stretched across the road. The finish line. Gustav lowered his head. He raised his back. He whipped his legs around with all their might and all their motion. The next time he looked up, he was bursting through the banner and rolling over the finish line, just before the next racer thundered past. The crowd roared. People lifted Gustav into their shoulders. They showered him with flowers. They sang victory songs. The police band played particular patriotic marches. But the celebration did not make the three judges happy. They were furious. They said that Gustav could not be the winner because he was never actually in the race. Besides, it was against the rules to ride at night. No, the big gold trophy would go to the next racer, not to Gustav. But no one seemed to care what the judges said. Even the king stepped up to hug Gustav and invite him to the palace, And to nearly everyone in Sweden, the winner was Gustav Hackinson, 66 years old. His hair was white as snow, his beard a great white bush, his smiling face an orb of wrinkles. To them, the winner of the tour of Sweden was the man that they all called Super Grandpa. Well, Gustav lived a few more years. He continued to ride his bike. He didn't enter any more big races, but the king had invited him to the castle. They dined together, and Gustav's memory lives on, especially in the little town of Kingsburg, California, where they have their Swedish days and interpretations of Gustav Hackinson. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy my story as much as I do. Have a good learning experience. Bye-bye.
All you gotta do is read a book, open up the cover and take a look. All you gotta do is read a book, open up the cover and